I don't want to see when you're not tired because then it will be. Anyhow, so for me, the critical thing here is that we must not forget that the objective of governance is to enable organizations to fulfill their purpose in an ethical, effective, and responsible manner. That comes straight out of ISO 37000. The problem, and forget AI for now, we will come to the AI, is that, as our minister said, Dominic Smith, the Minister of Public Admin and Artificial Intelligence, the whole objective here is to improve the quality of the service that we deliver while increasing efficiency, reducing bureaucracy without compromising quality. And as he said in this week's Express newspaper, you cannot build a smart nation on shaky ground. And I would go so far as to say you cannot build a smart organization on shaky ground. And if you're going to implement AI, and my experience is that most organizations put up their purpose and their mission and their vision and their values on the wall, but most of the people in the organization don't have a clue what that means, how it affects behavior, how they're supposed to interact with each other and their customers and other stakeholders. And if your human intelligence doesn't understand, how do you train your artificial intelligence? So for me, the conversation is about artificial intelligence in the context of the organization's purpose. And I will leave it there for now, and we will get into the conversation. So I want to introduce Edward. Edward is a principal expert cyber net security consultant and senior lead advisor to the CISO, and he is based in Barbados. So Edward, speak to us. We are listening.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. And I would say it has been a very interesting week, and we have learned quite a bit. I just want to take a minor twist. It's still in line to what we're going to be looking at. And one of the reasons why I want to reference this information is to understand the criticality that was discussed this week and then that way forward. So if we look at governance and AI trustworthiness, AI integration is expected to exceed over 80%, as the World Economist Forum has highlighted through the research and analysis. And out of that, 68% of organizations do not have processes to assess AI security. And AI security is highlighted around AI trustworthiness. Can it be compromised? Is it giving you what you want, and so forth? And when we look at the risk to organization globally using such a system, and we talk about data governance and all of these things, the awareness and so forth, we have to understand as we digitally transform, many businesses are going to come under some form of cybercrime threat. So the global cost of cybercrime is expected to reach around $19.7 trillion. That is a lot of money. That advises us that whatever we do, we need to do it very well. And the only approach that we can take from that is if we focus more on governance, as Nigel would have mentioned, not only from an AI perspective, but from a more global perspective. And as Mrs. Patricia Rossell had highlighted this morning, very exquisite discussion. As we put those processes in place, we have to look at the overall area, how governance is affecting organizations outside some of the very heavily regulated industries, like within the banking sector itself. The governance is really varying maturities, and AI itself, to build AI trustworthiness, if you're looking at the human agency and the oversight, it's robustness, security and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discriminatory and fairness. You also look at the societal and environmental well-being, and most of all, accountability. This involves many realms within different areas of governance. So if you think about data protection, data governance, cyber risk or cyber governance from that particular perspective, risk management, everything goes back to the board, us really understanding what is the risk to our vision and including not only organization reputation, but also to our reputation. So what is the current state of AI governance in corporate structures? And this came out of the NACD research. Investment in AI technologies is around 95%, but AI governance incorporated frameworks is at 34%. But board meeting discussions on AI is around 14%. Board oversight of AI is around 15%. Addressing bias in AI models, we would have talked about can you trust the information that is provided? Is it correct? Etc. That is around 32%. And data governance as a significant barrier to effective AI initiative is 62%. Again, still not where it's supposed to be, but again, these are information that has been put out. And again, there's no guarantee of, again, the full accuracy of these percentages. So what are some of the emerging risks in group structures? As we would have mentioned this morning, we have evolving cyber threats, digital transformation risks. AI plays a part in that, data analytics, big data, Internet of Things. All these things are part of the business to help it to deliver that service and also improve that stakeholders' trust within the organization. You also have AI risks surrounding AI. But one of the key things when it comes to across groups and many areas is the silo implementations that are going on within the large context of this year. Then you have the data governance challenges. As Mr. Goben would have mentioned, we have a data lake. We are pulling, within a large group, etc. We are having data taken from many different areas. Can we trust it? Is it sanitized enough? You just can't ingest it. So therefore, we're looking at roles within the organization that will be taken, to be able to address these issues. You have also regulatory complexity in the sense that there are many regulations that each jurisdiction follow. How can we stay on top of that? Can AI help us with that there? And not only the use of AI, but how is the use of AI in terms of its operations affecting in terms of like data governance, its security, and so forth? If it, let's say, is in Europe, is that AI safe? Is it in one of the categories that is allowed? We also have reputational contagion. Are we looking at how AI, as we integrate it into the organization, anything that we integrate it into the organization itself, can it cause irreparable damage or issues as it starts to fail? Let's say one business unit fail in terms of a particular data that is used by AI to provide maybe, let's say, through a portal, risks within the organization. It could be supply chain orders, etc. You already have the automation running. How is a particular business unit failure? And this failure could be data, corrupt data, or data has been tampered, or that failure of that unit. How does that cause that ripple effect through the organization? But comes to the last, which is really the first, is the enterprise management static. We would have highlighted throughout the whole conference that risk management and risk awareness is of key importance. We need to understand the risks within the use of AI and AI being able to provide the necessary data for us to make informed decisions. Is that data correct? Are we taking the necessary risk inputs to make sure that again, our governance covers a true picture of the organization. And as I wanted to say Dr. Patricia Rossi, but as Patricia Rossi said this morning, we have to, our risk management processes and activities have to be correct and mature. So what is that strategic path and AI framework for AI governance? We would have highlighted this week AI awareness training programs that every level of organization needs to commit at all levels. That is important for directors like ourselves to make informed decisions. We need to make sure that all those areas, we have that high level of understanding of AI risks around it, how it's going to help us to achieve a lot of those objectives. And overall, the vision. We also discussed policies and laws and regulations that need to exist to help us to be able to implement those policies within our organization. But again, it is an issue where we might be waiting for government to implement some of these policies and laws to help us to be able to define our own. But if we take a standard approach, we know that in every single policy or regulations that comes up is also based on an international standard. Very easy. We can follow that. We can start that process. We also look at AI risk management. We're looking at the impact of AI not only on the organization and its people, but from a societal perspective. So in other words, you're also looking at AI risks. Can it be tampered with? Can I trust it? Etc. We're also looking at the data that's used to train. Where is it coming from? Is it within the cloud? Do we have to acknowledge, data protection laws, etc.? And all this goes through the whole AI system life cycle. We also look at AI risk monitoring or risk monitoring in general. So if our risk management is lacking, therefore AI risk monitoring is also going to be lacking. But this also needs to be continuously monitored and improve AI system. We would talk about data can change. Is data up to date, etc. So we need to make sure that the AI that's operating and integrated in within the organization or the group itself is running as efficient and effective as much as possible. How do we achieve this here? Support governance through an AI management system based on the ISO standard, which is the 42001 that we would have mentioned throughout the conference itself. And what is that? Is to reduce risk surrounding the development, deployment, and utilization of AI, and enable the responsible and ethical use of AI, develop, deploy, and utilize AI in a trustworthy manner. We talk about that throughout the whole week. And develop, deploy, and utilize AI in the context of the organization, the institution. In other words, this standard is for any size organization, and it helps you to look at the governance perspective, the AI policies, the risk management, the training of all levels of what the AI is going to use, the risks, etc., and the continuous monitoring. And because this is an audible standard, it means then that you can be audited against it to make sure that you are following it through continuous monitoring improvement through the life cycle of the different AI projects or the overall AI of the organization itself. Last but not least, this is my strategic advice. Effectively managing the opportunities and risks associated with AI requires strong governance. This governance should align with stakeholders' expectations, improves the board's competencies in managing and due diligence, and enhance services. Its ultimate goal is to enhance the customer and client experience in service delivery, professional interactions surrounding AI-driven automation and operations. It is every board's corporate social responsibility, not only to its corporate, social, and cultural practices, but also to the people it serves. And we heard this word this week. Its stewardship is essential and form the DNA backbone throughout the group's vision. So that is my overview and advice going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward. I'd now like to ask Dr. Farrell to give us his words of wisdom. Terry?
Words of wisdom, Nigel.
Yep.
I think well, first of all, let me congratulate Kamla on another very, very successful conference. I think the most remarkable thing about this governance week, as big as the ones before, is Kamla's incredible ability to unearth new young talent from across the region to speak to some of these topics. And I think it really is, to my mind, is the foremost thing I think that comes out of this initiative. The identification of these young people who are full of ideas and so on. So thank you very much and congratulations to Kamla for that. I want to step back a little bit. I mean, George Gobin said that AI is a tool. I don't quite agree that AI is a tool. If AI is a tool, AI is a multiplicity of tools. But the reason why we call it artificial intelligence is because it actually um, promises to do much more than a tool. In fact, so some people are so concerned about it is that they think that it will make us the tool and it will be the intelligence. So this is not just a tool, it's not just another business application or business intelligence software, something like that. It is something much more profound. And this is why I think that a lot of folks are really seeing this as essentially a revolutionary, a pivotal moment in human history. And the way in which it can go, it can net, it can be a benefit, but net, it can also turn out to be quite bad for us human beings. So I want to kind of step back from the business and the corporate kind of focus and to say, first of all, there's a need for legislation. Because of the nature of what we are dealing with here in terms of artificial intelligence, there is a need for governments collectively and individually to have legislation, which means that you have to have a policy on artificial intelligence and how it is going to be used, what are the safeguards, and so on. We talked about the biases and all those kind of things which are very well known to people now, that addresses that question. So there must be policy and there must be legislation supporting that. The EU now has promulgated policy. They're now rolling out a whole set of implementation guidelines. They're continuing stakeholder discussions. They're dealing with the big tech firms, but they're also dealing with the folks who are in fact using the technology in the business community, in medicine, in law, in every field. We are seeing AI being used and providing tremendous benefits. It's being used in the military, right? The wars are now being fought basically driven by artificial intelligence. So there is need for legislation at the very top. The second thing I would say is that there is a need for education. And somebody mentioned that, in fact, I think it was Antonio Ayala who mentioned the fact that the thing is based on mathematics. It is based on partial differential calculus in terms of understanding how backpropagation works and so on. And not everybody needs to understand that, but people need to understand how essentially these large language models work, and therefore what are some of their limitations of them and where they can go wrong, why they go wrong, and so on. So there needs to be that level of understanding of the technology that you have. Most of us drive cars. We don't necessarily know how the engine works, but we know something about the car. We know something about its limitations. We have an idea as to how it works. We need to achieve that level of understanding in respect of artificial intelligence as a technology, as an enabling technology across all different kinds of fields of human endeavor. The third thing I would say is that we need, as societies, as Caribbean societies, is that these things are being developed in the metropolitan countries. They're being developed mostly in the United States, in China. Europe is lagging behind and they're very concerned about it. England is lagging behind, they're very concerned about it. And we are way, way, way down the track. In order to prevent the kind of recolonization that can come about as a result of, we used to talk about the digital divide. The digital divide now becomes a huge AI divide. We need to learn the lessons of the past, and we need to develop some local initiatives around AI. Data centers, we can build data centers, invite folks to come and local people as well as foreigners and multiple companies who are involved in this thing. Not just Google and the big guys who are doing it, but a whole range of smaller companies are looking for, essentially for energy to be able to run these AI data centers. We have energy in the Caribbean. We have energy in Guyana. We have energy in Trinidad. We have energy, geothermal energy in the Eastern Caribbean that we can use to build data centers that can be focused on small, specialized kinds of data centers that can then run AI models and that can then deal with some of the limitations that you have of the data that we get from these metropolitan models. Wayne Kubalsing has a very interesting article in today's Express where he talks about the children who are getting laptops. And he says the children are getting laptops and they're going to go onto the internet. And if they ask for Claxton Bay on the internet, they will get no answer because the internet does not have any data or any information about Claxton Bay, which is where they happen to be living. And so therefore we have an opportunity here in the Caribbean to in fact populate the internet with our own data, with information and data that comes from our companies, that comes from our experiences, and put that into the system and to use that to be able to kind of build and to enhance some of the larger models. In fact, very interestingly, models like DeepSeek, for example, don't necessarily go to the large models of ChatGPT. They in fact build on the large models and use them effectively. And that is a technique I think that we need to be thinking about. So from a policy point of view, we need to be thinking about how we do that. The fourth thing that came out of a discussion that we had with Javed Sajid was the kind idea of building these AI sandboxes, which goes to my point about AI data centers, and then you build these AI sandboxes. Let our entrepreneurs play with that. Our business community should not see themselves as mere users of some imported applications, AI applications. There are plenty of those, but see themselves as also innovators, looking at ways and using an AI sandbox supported by the government, subsidized by the government and so on, that allows them to play and to develop their own models and so on that are appropriate in many instances to the kinds of problems that we have here in the region. My fifth point is that you want to have, and somebody talked about this, I think it was Antonio Alaya then, about how you tackle AI projects. And you don't want to be doing many things, right? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to be doing a lot of things. You focus on one or two or three problems that relate to our Caribbean experience here. Focus on those problems and try to solve those problems. What you may then find is that your solutions that we develop to some of those problems using artificial intelligence then becomes usable in other developing countries, in other parts of the world, and so on. So we need to think a little bit differently, I think, about how we approach this. Point number 6 has to do, and I want to endorse the point completely made by George Gobin and others about the data quality issue and the data governance issue. As a region, we tend to give scant regard to the importance of data. And this is reflected, except in the case of Jamaica, to the state of our national central statistical offices and the quality of the data that we have in terms of our macroeconomic circumstances, our microeconomic data and so on, our social data, data on poverty data, now a number of things in the region are inadequate and they're in fact also not to date, right? Just go onto the website of any of these statistical agencies and you will see exactly what I mean. And my final point goes to culture, which has been mentioned many times during the course of the week, both in terms of the corporate culture that we have, but also importantly in terms of our national culture. And that national culture in terms of its approach to dealing with issues, dealing with, for example, where should we be on that track in respect of the adoption of artificial intelligence? Are we going to be a laggard, or are we going to be pushing ourselves up in certain areas, in certain lanes of artificial intelligence to be at the forefront of the thing? So culture is critically important. It determines essentially our approach to things. And I think that this is something that both inside our corporations and at a national level, we need to pay some attention to. So those are my contributions, Nigel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. So I will go to Dr. Garratt, and then we'll finish with Kamla before we start to really get into the conversation. And yes, I thank you for the correction on the tool, because I have a quote from OpenAI that says, unlike ordinary software, our models are massive neural networks. Their behaviors are learned from a broad range of data, not programmed explicitly. Though not a perfect analogy, the process is more like training a dog than to ordinary programming. So thank you for that correction. Professor Garratt, your words of wisdom.
Oh, what, at this time of night from a hot London?
Isn't it cooling down by now? It's done.
No. Temperature's going to go up to 34 tomorrow. It's quite
Oh my
warm.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I started